There was a time when every person on earth could trace their family back to one man. A time before kingdoms. Before empires. Before written history. Before the pyramids. Before Babylon. Before Egypt. Before the first great cities ever rose from the earth. The world was still young. Its rivers flowed untouched. Its forests stretched farther than the eye could see. Its mountains stood as silent witnesses to the earliest generations of mankind. Yet beneath that breathtaking beauty, something invisible had begun to spread. Not disease. Not war. Not famine. But something far more dangerous. The slow forgetting of Allah. Tonight, we journey back thousands of years to uncover one of the greatest true stories ever told. A story recorded in the Quran. Remembered in authentic hadith. Echoed in ancient historical traditions. And recognized across the world's oldest civilizations. It is the story of a prophet whose mission lasted longer than entire civilizations have existed. A man who preached for centuries. Who endured mockery with unimaginable patience. Who built a ship where no sea existed. And who witnessed the greatest flood in human history. This is the complete story of Prophet Noah, peace be upon him. Long before the ark. Long before the rain. Long before the floodwaters covered the earth. Humanity believed in one God. This is one of the clearest teachings found in Islam. The Prophet Muhammad said that between Adam and Noah were 10 generations, and all of them remained upon the truth before people gradually began to differ. This narration is reported from Ibn Abbas, R.A., and is accepted by many classical scholars as describing humanity's early adherence to pure monotheism. Those first generations carried the teachings of Adam, A.S. Parents taught their children that Allah alone created the heavens and the earth. Grandparents told stories of paradise. The memory of Satan's deception had not yet disappeared. People remembered why mankind had come to earth. Life was simple. The earth provided abundantly. Families cultivated fertile valleys. Shepherds led their flocks across green hills. Children played beside crystal-clear rivers. Every sunrise reminded believers of Allah's mercy. Every night sky testified to His limitless power. There were no temples built for idols. No carved images receiving prayers. No false gods competing with the Creator. Humanity remained united upon Tawhid, the worship of Allah alone. But Satan had not surrendered. Ever since his expulsion from paradise, Iblis had sworn before Allah that he would mislead the descendants of Adam. He could not force anyone to disbelieve. Instead, he waited. Patiently. Generation after generation. He understood something about the human heart. People rarely abandon truth all at once. They drift away slowly. One small compromise today. Another tomorrow. Until eventually they forget where the path began. This gradual corruption would become Satan's greatest weapon. Allah warns throughout the Quran that Satan is a clear enemy to mankind. He whispers. He beautifies falsehood. He makes sin appear harmless. Then he convinces people that they chose it themselves. That strategy had already begun long before the birth of Nuh AS. Among those early generations lived several extraordinarily righteous men. The Quran later preserves 5 of their names forever. Wad, Suwa, Yagath, Ya'ak, Nasr. These were not idols at first. They were not false gods. According to the explanation of Abdullah ibn Abbas, R.A., recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari, these were the names of righteous men from among the people before Noah. They devoted their lives to worship. They taught others. They reminded humanity of Allah. People respected them deeply. When they spoke, others listened. When they worshipped, others were inspired. When they died, their communities mourned sincerely. At first, the grief was genuine. Families remembered their teachers. Children missed their elders. Communities felt an emptiness that could not easily be replaced. Satan saw his opportunity. He did not immediately whisper, "Worship them." That would have failed. Instead, he whispered something that sounded wise. Something that sounded respectful. Something that sounded harmless. Build statues of these righteous people, so future generations will remember their devotion. The idea seemed innocent. After all, people were not worshipping the statues. They simply wanted reminders. A visual memory. A way to honor those who had inspired them to worship Allah. So they carved images. They placed them where the righteous men had once gathered. Parents pointed toward them while telling stories. This is Wad. He loved Allah. This is Suwa. She was remembered for righteousness. This is Yagath. He spent his life in worship. The first generation understood. The statues possessed no power. They were only memorials. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. The people who had built those statues died. Their children also passed away. Eventually, a generation appeared that no longer knew why the statues had been made. They inherited the monuments, but not the explanation. Once again, Satan whispered, "This is how your ancestors became close to Allah. Ask these righteous people to intercede. They are beloved. They can help you." At first, people merely stood near the statues while making dua. Later, some began touching them for blessings. Eventually, prayers were directed toward them. Offerings were left before them. Fear replaced knowledge. Superstition replaced revelation. The first act of organized idol worship had entered human history. Notice how slowly it happened. No sudden revolution. No overnight rejection of faith. Only small compromises. Repeated across generations. This pattern would later repeat itself many times throughout history. False beliefs often begin by exaggerating respect for righteous people until that respect crosses the boundary into worship. The Quran preserves those 5 names because they represent the first great deception after Adam. Not because the righteous men themselves were evil. They were believers. Rather, their memory became a tool manipulated by Satan after their deaths. This distinction is essential. Islam never blames the righteous servants for the corruption that later generations invented around them. As idol worship spread, society slowly changed. People still believed Allah existed. Many acknowledged him as creator. But they no longer worshipped him alone. They introduced intermediaries. They sought blessings from created beings. They trusted statues carved by human hands. The greatest crime in Islam, shirk, had entered the world. The earth itself remained beautiful. The rivers still flowed. Harvests still came. Children were still born. Outwardly, everything looked normal. But spiritually, humanity stood at the edge of disaster. Whenever corruption spreads deeply enough, Allah sends guidance. He does not abandon his creation. Generation after generation, he raises messengers from among the people themselves. Not angels. Not strangers. But human beings who understand the struggles of humanity. Among those chosen servants, Allah selected a man known for honesty, patience, wisdom, and unwavering faith. His name was Noah, peace be upon him. The Quran introduces him with remarkable dignity, and his mission would become one of the longest and most challenging ever entrusted to a prophet. Yet before he uttered his first call, before he warned his people, before the ark, before the flood, before history itself would change forever, one ordinary man would receive an extraordinary responsibility. That moment, the silence of the ancient world concealed a tragedy that could not be seen with human eyes. The valleys were still green. The rivers still shimmered beneath the morning sun. Families gathered around evening fires. Children laughed as they chased one another across fields of wild grass. Merchants exchanged goods. Farmers harvested crops. Shepherds guided their flocks through fertile hills. From the outside, human civilization appeared peaceful. But Allah does not judge a civilization by its buildings, its wealth, or its appearance. He judges hearts. And the hearts of mankind had begun to drift farther from their Creator than ever before. The statues of Wad, Suwa, Yagath, Ya'uk, and Nasr had become permanent fixtures in towns and villages. What began as memorials had become objects of devotion. People whispered prayers before them. Some believed these figures could carry their requests to Allah. Others thought the statues possessed blessings of their own. Parents taught these customs to their children. The children grew into adults. Those adults became elders. Soon, no one remembered a world without idols. Entire generations were born into error. To them, this was simply how life had always been. This is one of the greatest dangers described throughout the Quran. Falsehood repeated for generations begins to feel like truth. People often defend inherited traditions simply because they are familiar. The Quran repeatedly records the response of disbelieving nations. We found our forefathers following this way, and we are following in their footsteps. History changes. Cultures change. Languages change. Yet human nature remains remarkably similar. It was during this age of spiritual darkness that Allah chose one man. His name was Noah, peace be upon him. Unlike later prophets whose genealogies are described in greater detail, the Quran does not focus on Nuh's family lineage. Classical historians, drawing from early reports, generally describe him as a descendant of Adam through the line of Seth, Shith, but the exact number of generations varies among historical narrations. Because these reports are not established through authentic hadith, Muslims do not treat every genealogical detail as certain. What is certain is that Allah chose him. The Creator of the heavens and the earth selected an ordinary human being to carry an extraordinary responsibility. Like every prophet, Nuh was already known among his people. He lived among them. He understood their language, their customs, their fears, their hopes. His neighbors recognized his honesty long before revelation came. His character reflected sincerity. He neither sought wealth, nor political power, nor fame. Allah never chooses his messengers randomly. Every prophet possesses qualities that prepare him for the burden of revelation. Truthfulness, patience, mercy, courage, humility. These qualities become the foundation upon which prophethood is built. Then, the moment arrived. The exact place is unknown. The exact season is unknown. The Quran does not describe whether it happened in a mountain cave, a quiet valley, or beneath the stars. Allah intentionally leaves these details hidden. Instead, The Quran focuses on what truly matters. Allah revealed guidance to Nuh. For the first time, a messenger was sent to a people who had abandoned pure monotheism. Allah says, "Indeed, we sent Noah to his people." Quran 7:59, 11:25, 23:23, and elsewhere. This sentence appears repeatedly throughout the Quran. Its repetition emphasizes how important this mission was. Nuh was not merely preaching morality. He was calling humanity back to its original covenant with Allah. He stood at the turning point of human history. If his people repented, their civilization would be saved. If they refused, consequences would follow unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. Imagine standing alone before an entire civilization. Imagine knowing that almost everyone around you believes something false. Imagine realizing that every family, every marketplace, every gathering, every festival, centers around beliefs that contradict the truth revealed by Allah. That was the challenge before Nuh. His first words were not words of condemnation. They were words of mercy. Allah records them beautifully. "O my people, worship Allah. You have no deity other than Him." Quran 7:59. Notice how he begins. My people. Not my enemies. Not you sinners. Not you fools. He still claimed them as his people. His heart remained filled with compassion. This pattern appears with prophet after prophet. The messengers desired guidance for their nations, not their destruction. Nuh explained something humanity had forgotten. Allah alone creates. Allah alone provides. Allah alone gives life. Allah alone causes death. If only Allah possesses these powers, why should prayers be directed toward carved stone? Why seek help from lifeless statues that cannot hear, cannot speak, cannot move, cannot even defend themselves from birds resting upon them? The Quran repeatedly invites people to think. Not blindly imitate. Think. Observe. Reflect. Who created the heavens? Who sends rain? Who causes seeds to grow? Who created your hearing? Your sight? Your heart? These simple questions expose the weakness of idolatry. But false beliefs rarely survive through logic alone. They survive because they become attached to emotion, tradition, identity, and social status. Many leaders recognized immediately that Nuh threatened the religious system from which they benefited. If people abandoned idols, the influence of those who controlled religious customs would disappear. Power often resists truth. Not because truth is weak, but because truth exposes false authority. The chiefs gathered privately. They discussed the growing influence of Nuh. Some admitted, quietly, that his words made sense. Yet pride prevented them from accepting. Accepting his message would require admitting they had been wrong. Arrogance has destroyed countless nations. Iblis himself refused Allah's command because pride filled his heart. The leaders of Nuh's people repeated the same mistake. Allah records one of their first public responses. We see you only as a human being like ourselves. Quran 11:27. How familiar these words sound. Throughout history, people have often expected prophets to be angels, or kings, or men surrounded by unimaginable wealth. Instead, Allah consistently chooses ordinary human beings. Why? Because ordinary people cannot claim, we could never live like that. The prophets experienced hunger, fatigue, grief, loss, hardship. They demonstrated that obedience to Allah is possible for human beings. The leaders continued. And we do not see anyone following you except the lowest among us. This statement reveals another disease. Class prejudice. Many of the first believers were poor. Workers. Shepherds. Those without wealth or influence. The wealthy elites mocked them, as though social status determined truth. But Allah judges hearts. Not bank accounts. Not family names. Not worldly position. History would later repeat this pattern with Prophet Muhammad in Mecca. Many early Muslims were slaves, laborers, or socially weak. Truth often finds its first home among humble hearts. Despite rejection, Nuh did not become angry. He continued calling gently, patiently, day after day, week after week, year after year. He visited homes. He spoke in public gatherings. He advised families privately. He reminded elders. He taught children. Every sunrise became another opportunity. Every sunset ended with renewed hope. Because prophets measure success differently. They are responsible for delivering the message. Guidance itself belongs to Allah. Nuh understood this completely. He would continue calling, long after ordinary people would have surrendered. His mission would last. Not years. Not decades. But centuries. And the greatest test of patience recorded in human history was only beginning. Time is one of the greatest creations of Allah. It changes everything it touches. Mountains slowly wear away. Forests rise and disappear. Rivers carve valleys through solid stone. Entire civilizations are born, flourish, and vanish beneath the dust of history. For most people, a lifetime feels long. A child becomes an adult. An adult grows old. Then comes the meeting with Allah. Few people witness more than 1 century. Even fewer leave behind a legacy remembered beyond a few generations. But Allah decreed something extraordinary for His servant, Nuh AS. The Quran tells us with absolute clarity. Indeed, we sent Noah to his people, and he remained among them for 1,000 years minus 50 years. Then the flood overtook them while they were wrongdoers. Quran 29:14. This verse is one of the most remarkable statements in all of the Quran. Allah Himself tells us that Nuh remained among his people for 950 years. The majority of classical Muslim scholars understood this verse to refer to the period of his mission among his people before the flood. Some historical reports suggest that Nuh lived even longer than this, but those reports are not established by authentic hadith. What is certain from the Quran is that his time among his people before the flood lasted 950 years. Pause for a moment and consider what that means. 950 years. He watched children grow into grandparents. He buried generations. He saw entire family lines begin and end. He witnessed villages expand into towns. Forests change. Rivers alter their course. Yet through every passing year, his mission remained exactly the same. Worship Allah alone. Many people imagine that prophets experienced constant miracles and immediate success. The story of Nuh teaches the opposite. His greatest miracle was not the ark. It was patience. Imagine waking every morning for centuries with the same purpose. To call people toward Allah. Knowing that most would reject you. Knowing that many would mock you. Knowing that every day might end without a single new believer. Yet never allowing disappointment to extinguish hope. That is the patience of a prophet. Modern people often become discouraged after a few weeks. A teacher may lose hope after one difficult class. A parent may become frustrated after years of advising a child. A preacher may feel discouraged after speaking to an unresponsive audience. Nuh continued. For centuries. The Quran does not simply tell us how long he preached. It also shows us how he preached. Allah preserves Nuh's own words in Surah Nuh, one of the most personal chapters in the Quran. Near the end of his mission, Nuh spoke to Allah, describing every effort he had made. He said, "My Lord, indeed I invited my people night and day." Quran 71:5. Night and day. Not occasionally. Not when convenient. Not only during public gatherings. Every opportunity became an invitation toward truth. During daylight. He met people in markets. He spoke to shepherds in open fields. He advised travelers. He reminded merchants to fear Allah. At night. He visited homes. He comforted families. He answered questions. He prayed for those who rejected him. His mission never paused. Then Nuh continued. But my invitation only increased them in flight. Quran 71:6. Every prophet understands this pain. The more sincerely he invited, the farther many people ran. Sometimes, the truth makes people uncomfortable. Not because it is false, but because accepting it requires change. Repentance requires humility. Humility requires admitting mistakes. Pride resists both. Nuh described their astonishing reaction. He said, "Whenever I invited them so that you might forgive them, they put their fingers into their ears, wrapped themselves in their garments, persisted in their disbelief, and became increasingly arrogant." Quran 71:7. Imagine the scene. A prophet approaches with kindness. Before he can finish speaking, people cover their ears. Some pull their cloaks over their heads. Others turn their backs and walk away. Not because they had defeated his arguments, but because they refused to hear them. How often has humanity repeated this behavior? People sometimes reject ideas. Not after careful consideration, but because they fear where those ideas might lead. The leaders of Nuh's people understood that accepting Tawhid would require abandoning the entire religious system built around idols. Truth threatened their influence. So they chose denial over reflection. Yet Nuh did not rely upon one method alone. He told Allah. Then I invited them openly. Quran 71:8. Public gatherings. Large crowds. Community meetings. Everyone heard the message. When that brought little response, he changed his approach. He said, "Then I spoke to them publicly and I spoke to them privately." Quran 71:9. This verse reveals remarkable wisdom. Different people respond differently. Some accept advice only in private. Others benefit from public reminders. Nuh adjusted his methods while keeping the message unchanged. This flexibility became an important lesson for later generations of Muslims. The truth remains constant. Methods of communicating it may vary. His message was filled with hope rather than despair. He called out, "Seek forgiveness from your Lord. Indeed, He is ever forgiving." Quran 71:10. Notice what he offered first. Not punishment. Not fear. Forgiveness. Allah's mercy always comes before his punishment for those willing to repent. Then Nuh described the blessings of sincere repentance. He said that Allah would send abundant rain, increase wealth, bless families with children, cause gardens to flourish, and rivers to flow. The Quran links spiritual obedience with blessings, while also teaching elsewhere that worldly tests may still come according to Allah's wisdom. Nuh reminded his people that turning back to Allah would benefit both this life and the next. He then asked one of the most profound questions found anywhere in the Quran. What is wrong with you that you do not hope for the greatness of Allah? Quran 71:13. This question echoes across every generation. Why do human beings stand in awe of kings, yet ignore the King of Kings? Why do they fear losing worldly status, but not losing Allah's pleasure? Why admire the creation more than the Creator? To awaken their hearts, Nuh invited them to observe the world around them. He pointed toward the heavens, the earth, the moon, the sun, human creation, plant life, mountains. Every part of creation testified to Allah's greatness. The Quran repeatedly encourages this kind of reflection. Faith is not blind. It is supported by signs scattered throughout the universe. Every sunrise, every newborn child, every drop of rain, every growing seed, points toward its Creator. But despite centuries of preaching, the number of believers remained very small. The Quran does not tell us the exact number. Some early historical reports mention only a few dozen believers. Others suggest slightly different figures. These reports are not authenticated through the Quran or Sahih Hadith, so their exact numbers cannot be confirmed. What matters is the lesson. Success in the sight of Allah is not measured by numbers. A prophet can preach for nearly a millennium and still have relatively few followers, yet remain among the greatest human beings who ever lived. Nuh had fulfilled his duty. He delivered the message with patience no ordinary human could imagine. But the hearts of his people continued to harden. Their rejection would soon become more aggressive. Mockery would turn into open ridicule. The wealthy chiefs would unite against him. And Allah would reveal that a moment was approaching when no new believers would ever come again. That heartbreaking announcement would change the course of Nuh's mission forever. For nearly 1,000 years, Prophet Nuh AS had done everything that could possibly be expected of a human being. He had preached under the blazing sun. He had spoken beneath the quiet stars. He had called people in public and in private. He had warned them with wisdom. He had comforted them with hope. He had reminded them of Allah's forgiveness. He had shown them the signs scattered throughout creation. He had answered their questions. He had endured their insults. And still, most of his people refused to believe. Time, however, had revealed something else. The resistance to Nuh's message was no longer simply the resistance of ordinary people who were confused or uncertain. It had become an organized campaign led by those who feared losing their influence. The Quran repeatedly highlights that in nearly every nation, it was the wealthy chiefs, tribal leaders, and powerful elites who stood at the front of opposition to Allah's messengers. Their authority depended upon preserving the existing order. The idols were no longer only objects of worship. They had become symbols of political unity, economic power, and social control. To abandon them would mean admitting that generations of leaders had been wrong. Pride would not allow such an admission. Allah records one of their accusations in Surah Hud. We see that you are only a man like ourselves. Quran 11:27. To them, this seemed like an undeniable argument. How could an ordinary human claim to receive revelation? If Allah wished to send guidance, they argued, why would he not send an angel? This same objection would later be raised against many prophets, including Prophet Muhammad. But the Quran answers this clearly. If angels had lived upon the earth as its inhabitants, Allah says he would have sent an angelic messenger. Instead, because humans live on earth, Allah sends human prophets who understand hunger, grief, family, hardship, temptation, and patience. A messenger must be someone whose life people can realistically follow. If Nuh had been an angel, his people could have claimed, "We are only human. We cannot live as angels do." Allah removed that excuse forever. The chiefs continued, "We do not see anyone following you except the lowest among us, those who are insignificant in our eyes." Quran 11:27. This statement revealed what truly filled their hearts. Arrogance. They judged people according to wealth, according to family lineage, according to social influence. The believers who gathered around Nuh were often ordinary workers, shepherds, laborers, and humble families. The leaders looked at them and laughed. If your message were true, they argued, the important people would have accepted it first. History would prove them wrong again and again. Truth has never depended on popularity. Nor has guidance been reserved for the wealthy. Allah alone knows the sincerity hidden inside every heart. The Quran repeatedly reminds believers that the most honored before Allah are not the richest or the strongest, but those who are most conscious of Him. The chiefs demanded that Nuh separate himself from the poor believers. They wanted a religion that favored the elite. One that made distinctions between the powerful and the weak. The Quran preserves Nuh's remarkable response. He refused. He would not drive away sincere believers simply to satisfy the pride of the wealthy. Every human being stood equal before Allah. Whether king or shepherd, merchant or orphan, slave or chief. Their worth would be measured by faith and righteousness, not by worldly status. This principle became one of the defining characteristics of every prophetic message. Centuries later, Prophet Muhammad would receive similar commands when influential leaders asked him to distance himself from poor Muslims. Allah rejected those demands then, just as he had rejected them during the time of Nuh. Unable to defeat Nuh's arguments, the leaders changed their strategy. Instead of debating him honestly, they attacked his character. This pattern appears throughout history. When falsehood cannot answer the truth, it often attempts to discredit the messenger. Some accused him of being misguided. Others mocked his warnings. Still others claimed he sought personal status. Yet Nuh desired none of these things. The Quran records him saying repeatedly that he asked no payment from his people. His reward belonged only to Allah. He neither sold revelation nor sought wealth through preaching. This became another consistent sign of true prophets. Their mission was never a business. As years turned into centuries, the opposition became increasingly bold. The leaders gathered before crowds and repeated the names of the ancient idols. Wad, Suwa, Yagath, Ya'uk, Nasr. Allah records their words in Surah Nuh. Do not abandon your gods. Do not abandon Wad, nor Suwa, nor Yagath, nor Ya'uk, nor Nasr. Quran 71:23. This verse is one of the most historically significant passages in the Quran. It preserves the names of the earliest known idols in human history. According to the authentic explanation reported from Abdullah ibn Abbas, R.A., in Sahih al-Bukhari, these names originally belonged to righteous people. After their deaths, Satan inspired people to make images of them as memorials. Generations later, those images became objects of worship. This narration beautifully explains how shirk entered humanity gradually rather than suddenly. It also serves as a timeless warning. Islam teaches respect for righteous people. But respect must never cross into acts of worship. Prayer belongs to Allah alone. Supplication belongs to Allah alone. Ultimate hope and fear belong to Allah alone. The leaders understood something important. If the idols disappeared, their authority would disappear with them. Religion had become intertwined with power. Pilgrims visited sacred sites connected to the idols. Offerings flowed toward influential families. Traditions reinforced social hierarchies. Nuh threatened all of it with one simple sentence. Worship Allah alone. Sometimes the simplest truths produced the strongest resistance. The years continued to pass. Children who had once laughed at Nuh became old men. Those old men died. Their grandchildren inherited the same disbelief. Entire generations came and went while the prophet remained among them, tirelessly calling them towards salvation. Imagine the emotional burden. Every newborn child represented hope. Perhaps this generation would listen. Perhaps these children would grow into believers. But many instead inherited the same arrogance as their parents. The cycle repeated again and again. Yet Nuh never stopped praying for them. Never stopped hoping. Never stopped delivering Allah's message. At times, he would stand beneath the open sky and point toward the heavens. Look above you, he urged. Who raised these skies without pillars that you can see? He pointed toward the earth. Who spread this land for you? He watched rain nourish barren fields. Seeds broke through the soil. Fruit ripened on trees. Rivers overflowed with fresh water. Every part of creation testified to its creator. The evidence surrounded them every single day. Yet hearts blinded by arrogance often refuse to see what eyes can clearly observe. Allah, however, sees beyond appearances. He knows every whisper. Every hidden intention. Every sincere tear. Every stubborn refusal. After centuries of invitation, Allah revealed to Nuh a message unlike any he had received before. It was not another command to continue inviting with renewed hope. It was a revelation that brought both certainty and sorrow. Allah informed him that those who had not already believed would never believe. The door of guidance for his nation had reached its final moment. The centuries of patient calling had come to their end. A new chapter was about to begin. It would no longer center on preaching. It would center on preparation. Preparation for an event so unimaginable that no human civilization had ever witnessed anything like it before. Allah would command his prophet to build an enormous vessel. Not beside the sea, but far from any ocean. A ship that would become the most famous vessel in human history. And when the people saw Nuh cutting timber under a clear sky, their laughter would grow louder than ever before. There are moments in history when a single revelation changes everything. For centuries, Prophet Nuh AS had lived with one hope. Perhaps tomorrow someone would believe. Perhaps the next generation would soften their hearts. Perhaps one sincere conversation would rescue another soul from destruction. That hope had carried him through centuries of rejection. Every insult had been endured because there was still the possibility of repentance. Every act of mockery had been forgiven because the door of mercy remained open. But now, that door was about to close. Not because Allah's mercy had ended. Allah's mercy never ends. Rather, his perfect knowledge had already encompassed every heart. He knew who would believe. He knew who never would. He knew every hidden intention that no human eye could ever see. Then came the revelation that every prophet dreads. Allah said, "It was revealed to Noah, none of your people will believe except those who have already believed. So do not grieve over what they have been doing." Quran 11:36. Imagine hearing those words. After 950 years of inviting people to Allah, there would be no more new believers. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Not in another century. The mission of calling his people had reached its conclusion. The opportunity for repentance had expired. For Nuh AS, this revelation was deeply painful. A prophet does not measure success by numbers. But he longs for every soul to be saved. He had watched generations grow. He knew these people by name. He had seen them as children. He had buried their parents. He had prayed for them in the quiet hours of the night. Now Allah informed him that the remaining hearts had become permanently sealed because of their own persistent choice to reject the truth. The Quran repeatedly teaches that Allah does not wrong anyone. People close their own hearts through repeated arrogance and refusal until they no longer desire guidance. Yet alongside this heartbreaking news came comfort. Allah said, "Do not grieve over what they have been doing." These words reveal Allah's mercy toward His prophets. Nuh had carried the emotional burden of an entire nation for centuries. Now Allah Himself was telling His servant that He had fulfilled His responsibility completely. The burden of their disbelief no longer rested upon His shoulders. Every warning had been delivered. Every opportunity had been offered. Justice would now take its course. Then came another command. A command unlike anything ever given before. Allah said, "And construct the ark under our eyes and according to our revelation, and do not speak to me concerning those who have wronged. Indeed, they are to be drowned." Quran 11:37. This verse is extraordinary. Allah did not simply tell Nuh to build a ship. He promised something far greater. The ark would be built under Allah's protection and guidance. The phrase, "under our eyes," is understood by the scholars of al-Sunnah to affirm Allah's perfect knowledge, care, and protection in a manner that befits His majesty, without likening Him to His creation. Nuh would not undertake this impossible task alone. Allah Himself would guide every stage of the work. Imagine Nuh standing quietly after receiving this revelation. For centuries, his hands had held no carpenter's tools. His life had been devoted to calling people toward Allah. Now, he would become the builder of the greatest ship the world had ever known. The command itself must have seemed astonishing. Build a ship. But where? There was no coastline nearby. No harbor. No ocean stretching before him. Only dry land. Rolling hills. Fields. Mountains. Trees. Anyone watching would immediately assume he had lost his mind. Yet prophets never measure Allah's commands by human logic. If Allah commands, the believer obeys. Even before understanding how everything will unfold. The Quran does not tell us the exact dimensions of the ark. Unlike the book of Genesis, which gives specific measurements, the Quran intentionally leaves those details unstated. Some early Islamic historians mention dimensions drawn from Israeliyat, reports originating from Jewish and Christian traditions, but these are not confirmed by authentic Islamic sources. Therefore, Muslims affirm only what the Quran and authentic Sunnah establish with certainty. Allah commanded Nuh to build an ark. It was sufficient to save the believers and the creatures Allah chose. Beyond that, exact technical details remain unknown. Nuh began gathering materials. He searched forests for strong trees. Massive trunks were cut and carefully transported. Branches were stripped away. The timber was shaped by hand. Every beam required enormous physical effort. The sound of axes echoed across the valleys. Wood chips covered the ground. The scent of fresh cedar and cypress filled the air. Day after day, the prophet worked. His elderly hands, worn by centuries of worship and preaching, now labored with saws, ropes, and wooden pegs. His faithful followers worked beside him. There were not many of them. But every believer understood that this was no ordinary construction project. It was an act of worship. Every plank they lifted. Every beam they placed. Every joint they secured. Was done in obedience to Allah. Soon, the people noticed. Curiosity spread quickly through the villages. What is Nuh building? Some climbed nearby hills to watch. Others gathered in small groups, whispering among themselves. Before long, laughter erupted. The Quran describes the scene with remarkable simplicity. Whenever the chiefs of his people passed by him, they ridiculed him. Quran 11:38. Imagine the ridicule. A prophet who had spent centuries warning of Allah's judgment, now building a giant ship, far from any sea. The leaders laughed openly. Children pointed and mocked. Some sarcastically asked, "Have you become a carpenter now?" Others sneered, "Where is this ship supposed to sail? There isn't even enough water for a fishing boat." Still others mocked. "Perhaps Nuh expects the mountains to become oceans." The laughter echoed through the valley. To them, the ark was proof that Nuh had finally become delusional. They believed they had won. But Nuh did not argue. He did not become angry. He simply continued working. Then he answered with one sentence that history would never forget. Allah records his words. "If you ridicule us, then we too will ridicule you just as you ridicule us. And you will soon know upon whom a punishment will come that will disgrace him and upon whom a lasting punishment will descend." Quran 11:38-39. Notice the confidence. Not arrogance. Certainty. The certainty of someone who trusts Allah completely. Nuh was not threatening from personal anger. He was conveying Allah's warning one final time. The mockers believed the ark was absurd. Soon, reality itself would expose who had truly understood the future. As the months passed, the ark grew larger. Its towering wooden frame rose above the landscape. Every new beam became another silent testimony that Allah's promise was approaching. People continued laughing. But among the believers, something else was growing. Hope. Not because they understood every detail, but because they trusted the one who had commanded the ark to be built. They did not know exactly when the flood would come. They did not know how the water would cover the earth. They did not know what signs would announce the beginning. Only Allah knew the appointed hour. Yet every strike of the hammer brought that hour closer. The world continued its ordinary routine. Markets remained busy. Children played. Farmers planted crops. Wedding celebrations took place. Life appeared completely normal. No one except Nuh and the believers realized that humanity was living through its final days before the greatest judgment the earth had ever witnessed. And then, Allah would reveal the sign. A sign so unexpected that no human being could possibly have imagined it. Not from the sea. Not from the sky. But from an oven. A simple household oven would become the signal that the flood had begun. The ark stood complete. Its massive wooden frame dominated the landscape like nothing humanity had ever seen before. For years, the people had watched it grow. They had laughed when the first tree was cut. They had mocked every beam that was raised. They had joked with one another as they walked past its towering sides. To them, it remained the greatest symbol of Nuh's supposed failure. A ship. Without an ocean. A vessel. Far from any shoreline. An enormous construction project that seemed to serve no purpose at all. But the believers looked upon the ark differently. Every wooden plank reminded them of Allah's promise. Every rope tied around its beams strengthened their certainty. Every nail driven into the timber was another step toward a future only Allah fully knew. For years, they had trusted without seeing. Now, the time of seeing was drawing near. The Quran does not tell us exactly how much time passed between the completion of the ark and the beginning of the flood. Allah leaves that detail unknown. Perhaps it was days. Perhaps weeks. Perhaps longer. The wisdom in this silence is profound. Believers are taught not to worship Allah because they know the timetable. They worship Him because they trust Him. Nuh AS did not ask, when exactly will it happen? He simply remained ready. This is one of the timeless lessons of every prophet. Preparation comes before understanding. Obedience comes before certainty of outcomes. Then came the moment that separated ordinary history from one of the greatest miracles ever witnessed. Allah says, "Until, when our command came and the tanner overflowed." Quran 11:40. The Arabic word tanner literally refers to a baking oven or furnace. For centuries, scholars have discussed its meaning. The majority understood it according to its apparent meaning, a household oven or place of baking from which water unexpectedly burst forth. Other classical interpretations mention a specific location or symbolic meaning. However, the strongest and most widely accepted understanding among the early scholars is that Allah caused water to gush from a tanner as the first unmistakable sign that His decree had begun. Imagine the scene. Morning begins like any other. Women prepare bread. Families begin their daily work. Children awaken. The sky appears ordinary. No violent storm yet fills the horizon. No roaring flood rushes through the valleys. Everything seems normal. Then, without warning, water begins pouring from an oven. Not smoke. Not fire. Water. Cold. Clear. Powerful. It gushes upward from a place where flames once burned. People stop and stare. Confusion spreads instantly. How can water emerge from fire? How can an oven become a spring? The impossible is happening before their eyes. For Nuh, this was the sign. Exactly as Allah had promised. The appointed hour had arrived. At the same time, the heavens themselves began to change. Dark clouds gathered from every direction. The bright blue sky slowly disappeared beneath heavy masses of black and gray. The wind shifted. Birds flew lower than usual. Animals grew restless. The air itself seemed different. Nature was responding to a command issued by its creator. Every cloud, every drop of water, every gust of wind, every river, every spring beneath the earth, obeyed Allah perfectly. Only human beings had chosen rebellion. Allah then commanded Nuh, "Carry into it two of every kind, a pair, along with your family except those against whom the decree has already gone forth, and those who have believed." Quran 11:40. This verse contains several separate commands. First, pairs of creatures. Second, His believing family. Third, the believers. But there was also one heartbreaking exception. Except those against whom the decree has already gone forth. Even before entering the ark, Nuh knew that not every member of his household would be saved. Faith is never inherited automatically. Every soul chooses its own path. Being related to a prophet is not enough. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes personal responsibility. No family connection can replace sincere belief. How exactly did the animals gather? The Quran simply tells us that Allah commanded Nuh to take pairs. It does not explain every detail. Some early historical reports describe animals arriving from every direction under Allah's guidance. These descriptions appear in early Islamic historical works and in Jewish and Christian traditions, but they are not confirmed through authentic hadith. What Muslims affirm with certainty is this: Allah commanded, and the command was fulfilled. Imagine the wonder. Across forests, mountains, valleys, and open plains, creatures begin moving. A pair of deer, A pair of wolves. A pair of lions. Camels. Horses. Sheep. Goats. Birds descending from the sky. Small animals emerging from beneath rocks. Insects crawling from hidden places. Everything responding to the command of the one who created them. The same Lord who had taught birds to migrate. Who guided salmon back to their rivers. Who inspired bees to build perfect hives. Now directed his creatures toward the ark. No confusion. No disorder. Creation obeyed. The believers watched with amazement. Many had endured decades of mockery. Some had lost family members because they refused idolatry. Others had been ridiculed in public. Now, their faith was becoming visible. Everything Nuh had promised was unfolding before their eyes. The impossible had become reality. Outside the ark, the mockers continued laughing. Some pointed toward the gathering animals and invented foolish explanations. Others dismissed the overflowing oven as a strange natural event. Still others insisted that everything would soon return to normal. This is another recurring lesson throughout the Quran. When hearts refuse guidance, even miracles may be explained away. The problem is not lack of evidence. The problem is unwillingness to submit. One by one, families of believers climbed aboard the ark. They carried only what they needed. No treasures. No monuments. No luxurious possessions. Everything they had built throughout their lives would soon disappear beneath water. The wealth of the unbelievers. Their homes. Their marketplaces. Their statues. Their fields. Their pride. None of it would survive. Only faith would remain valuable. This truth echoes throughout the Quran. On the day of judgment, neither wealth nor children will benefit anyone except those who come before Allah with a sound heart. The ark itself became a symbol of that reality. Outside, there was worldly security that would soon vanish. Inside, there was apparent uncertainty, but true safety through obedience to Allah. As the final believers entered, Nuh walked through the great vessel. He looked upon every section. The animals had settled. Families gathered quietly. Children held tightly to their parents. There was no celebration. No cheering. Only solemn reflection. They knew they were witnessing the end of an entire civilization. Some quietly remembered relatives who had refused to believe. Others wondered what the coming hours would bring. The sky continued darkening. Thunder rolled across distant mountains. The wind grew stronger. Water still poured from the tanner. Streams overflowed their banks. Springs burst from the earth in places they never had before. The world itself seemed to awaken under Allah's command. Then Nuh addressed those aboard the ark with words preserved forever in the Quran. Board it. In the name of Allah will be its course and its anchorage. Indeed, my Lord is most forgiving, most merciful. Quran 11:41. These are among the most beautiful words spoken by any prophet. He did not praise the ark. He did not praise his own craftsmanship. He placed complete trust in Allah alone. The ship would not sail because of wood. It would sail because Allah permitted it. It would not survive because of human engineering. It would survive because Allah protected it. Every believer aboard understood this. Their security rested not in timber, but in tawakkul, complete reliance upon their Lord. Outside, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Within moments, the skies would open. The earth would burst forth. The rivers would overflow. And history would enter the most terrifying flood humanity had ever known. The first raindrops seemed almost gentle. They struck the wooden deck of the ark with soft, rhythmic sounds. A few believers looked upward. Some silently whispered words of remembrance. Others held their children close. For a brief moment, the rain appeared ordinary. It looked like the kind of rain that had nourished crops for generations. The kind that farmers welcomed. The kind that filled rivers and brought life to the earth. But this rain had not come to nourish. It had come to judge. Within minutes, the sky grew darker than anyone had ever witnessed. The sun disappeared behind enormous clouds that stretched from one horizon to the other. Thunder rolled across the mountains like the sound of countless armies approaching. Lightning tore through the darkness, illuminating the valleys in flashes of brilliant white. The wind roared with increasing violence. Trees bent beneath its force. Birds disappeared from the sky. Animals that had not entered the ark searched desperately for higher ground. Nature itself had become an obedient soldier carrying out the command of its creator. Allah describes this overwhelming moment with extraordinary power in Surah Al-Qamar. So we opened the gates of the heaven with pouring water. Quran 54:11. Notice the language. Allah does not merely say that rain fell. He says the gates of heaven were opened. It is a description unlike ordinary rainfall. It was as though the sky itself had become an endless ocean pouring downward upon the earth. The believers aboard the ark watched as sheets of water descended with unimaginable force. Visibility disappeared. The landscape slowly faded behind curtains of rain. Mountains became shadows. Forests vanished into gray mist. The familiar world they had always known was beginning to disappear. But the rain alone was not the source of the flood. Allah continues. And we caused the earth to burst with springs, and the waters met for a matter already decreed. Quran 54:12. This verse reveals something astonishing. Water did not only come from above. It also came from below. Across the earth, springs erupted. The ground split open. Water burst from cracks in the rocks. Dry valleys suddenly became raging rivers. Water surged from places where no spring had ever existed. The same earth that had faithfully supported humanity for generations now obeyed a different command. Every hidden reservoir beneath the surface responded instantly to Allah. The flood was not caused by one river overflowing, nor by one storm. The heavens and the earth worked together in perfect obedience. Water descended from above. Water surged from below. And they met exactly as Allah had decreed. The Quran repeatedly reminds believers that every force in creation belongs entirely to Allah. Human beings may study nature. They may observe weather. They may build shelters. But no one controls the clouds except Allah. No one commands the oceans except Allah. No one restrains the rivers except Allah. Every drop of water moves only by His permission. The Great Flood became one of the clearest demonstrations of this reality. The people who had trusted in their own strength suddenly discovered how powerless they truly were. Inside the ark, a strange silence settled over the believers. Outside, chaos ruled. Inside, faith remained calm. Children clung to their parents. The elderly sat quietly in prayer. The animals, by Allah's will, remained under control despite the terrifying sound surrounding them. The massive wooden vessel groaned as waves began lifting it from the earth. For years, it had rested motionless upon dry land. Now, slowly, almost imperceptibly, it moved. The ark floated. The impossible had become reality. The ship that had once been the object of ridicule was now the only place of safety on earth. Every laugh directed at Nuh echoed back as a reminder of human arrogance. Allah says, "And it sailed with them through waves like mountains." Quran 11:42. This is one of the most vivid descriptions in the Quran. Not ordinary waves. Waves like mountains. Imagine walls of water rising higher than forests. Higher than hills. Towering masses of water crashing against one another with unimaginable force. The ark climbed their slopes like a leaf carried by the wind. Then descended into deep valleys between the waves. Every believer aboard knew that no human shipbuilder could have engineered survival under such conditions. Only Allah's protection kept the ark afloat. The believers remembered Nuh's words before boarding. In the name of Allah will be its course and its anchorage. Now they understood those words more deeply than ever. The ark floated not because of its size. Not because of its wood. Not because of human skill. It floated because Allah sustained it. Outside, panic spread across the earth. Those who had laughed now screamed. Families ran toward the hills. Parents carried children upon their shoulders. Strong men struggled against rising currents. Livestock scattered in every direction. The idols that had stood for generations remained helpless. Wad could not save anyone. Suwa could not answer a single prayer. Yagath. Ya'uk. Nasr. Silent stone figures stood as floodwaters surrounded them. They neither moved nor spoke. The very objects people had trusted proved utterly powerless. The Quran repeatedly asks a profound question. Can those besides Allah benefit you or harm you? The flood answered that question before the eyes of an entire civilization. Buildings collapsed. Trees were uprooted. Massive boulders rolled down mountainsides. Rivers merged into one endless sea. Roads disappeared. Fields vanished beneath swirling waters. Every familiar landmark slowly disappeared. The earth that humanity believed it controlled revealed its true master. The flood was not blind destruction. It was divine judgment. For nearly a millennium, mercy had come first. Warnings had come first. Forgiveness had been offered first. Only after centuries of persistent rejection did judgment arrive. Allah is never unjust. The Quran emphasizes repeatedly that He does not punish a people until the message has been delivered clearly. Nuh had delivered it with patience unmatched in human history. As the ark rose higher upon the waters, Nuh looked across the flooded landscape. Somewhere among those drowning crowds were people he had known for centuries. Neighbors. Relatives. Old friends. Children he had watched grow into adulthood. A prophet does not rejoice at punishment, even when justice is being fulfilled. His heart remains filled with compassion. Then, through the sheets of rain and towering waves, Nuh saw a familiar figure. His own son. Standing apart from the believers. Still refusing to board the ark. Still believing he could save himself. In that heartbreaking moment, the greatest trial of Nuh's life would no longer concern an entire nation. It would concern his own family. The next conversation would become one of the most emotional exchanges recorded anywhere in the Quran. A conversation between a father desperately calling his son, and a son whose confidence in worldly means would lead to eternal loss. The rain showed no sign of stopping. The heavens continued pouring water with overwhelming force. The earth continued releasing torrents from every direction. The distinction between rivers and valleys had disappeared. The familiar landscape of generations was gone. Only endless water, violent winds, and towering waves remained. The ark rose and fell upon the mountainous swells, protected only by the command of Allah. Inside, the believers remained together. Some prayed quietly. Others comforted frightened children. Many reflected upon the countless years during which Nuh AS had patiently warned his people. Everything he had promised was unfolding exactly as Allah had revealed. Outside, the world had become a scene of unimaginable terror. People who had laughed only days earlier now searched desperately for anything that might save them. Some climbed trees. Others struggled toward hills. Many clung to floating debris. But no human strength could overcome what Allah had decreed. Then, through the sheets of rain, Nuh saw someone whose face he recognized immediately. His own son. The Quran does not mention the son's name. Many historical books refer to him as Canaan or Yam, names found in some early reports and in biblical tradition. However, the Quran itself does not name him, and no authentic hadith confirms his name. What matters is not his identity. What matters is the lesson. He was the son of one of the greatest prophets who ever lived. Yet even this extraordinary family connection could not save him without faith. Imagine Nuh's heart in that moment. For centuries he had carried the burden of an entire nation. Now, as the flood erased the world around him, his concern focused upon one young man. A son he had loved. A child he had held in his arms. A boy he had watched grow. He had taught him. Advised him. Warned him. Prayed for him. Surely. Perhaps. Even now. At the final moment. His son might still believe. The Quran records one of the most emotional appeals ever spoken by a father. "O my son! Come aboard with us, and do not be with the disbelievers." Quran 11:42. Notice the tenderness. He did not begin with anger. He did not condemn him. He called him with love. "O my son!" Even while judgment was unfolding, the heart of a father still hoped. Still reached out. Still invited. The door of repentance remained open until the final decree overtook the individual. Nuh wanted his son to step onto the ark. Not because it was made of wood, but because it represented obedience to Allah. The ark was not merely transportation. It had become the visible sign of divine mercy. His son answered immediately. His response revealed the very disease that had destroyed his people for centuries. He said, "I will take refuge on a mountain that will protect me from the water." Quran 11:43. Those words were filled with confidence. Confidence in worldly means. Confidence in human reasoning. Confidence in visible strength. He looked around and saw towering mountains. Surely no flood could reach such heights. He believed that geography could overcome the decree of Allah. How often has humanity repeated this mistake? People trust their wealth, their technology, their governments, their armies, their intelligence, their influence. These blessings are valuable only when understood as gifts from Allah. When they replace trust in Allah, they become false securities. Nuh's son believed the mountain would succeed where revelation had supposedly failed. He thought the height of the rocks would defeat the command of the creator of the rocks. Nuh answered with heartbreaking certainty. He said, "Today there is no protector from the decree of Allah except for those upon whom He has mercy." Quran 11:43. This sentence is among the most powerful declarations of Tawhid in the Quran. No fortress can save. No mountain can save. No army can save. No wealth can save. No family can save. Only Allah saves. Every means in creation works only by His permission. The mountain itself existed because Allah created it. If Allah decreed that water should rise above it, nothing could prevent it. The conversation lasted only moments. The flood allowed no more time. The Quran describes the end with astonishing brevity. Then a wave came between them, and he was among those who drowned. Quran 11:43. No dramatic farewell. No final embrace. No lengthy dialogue. Only a wave. One enormous wave rose between father and son. For an instant, the son disappeared from sight. The waters closed over him, and the opportunity was gone forever. The Quran does not describe his struggle. It does not dwell upon the details of death. Instead, it directs attention toward the lesson. Faith cannot be inherited. This truth appears repeatedly throughout the stories of the prophets. The father of Prophet Ibrahim, as, rejected his message. The wife of Prophet Lut, AS, betrayed the believers. The son of Prophet Nuh, AS, refused to obey. At the same time, the wife of Pharaoh became one of the greatest believing women in history despite living in the palace of one of humanity's worst tyrants. Allah teaches that every soul stands individually before Him. Lineage cannot replace belief. Family honor cannot substitute for sincerity. Each person chooses his own relationship with Allah. As the ark continued riding the waves, Nuh's heart broke. He had accepted Allah's decree. Yet he remained a father. The loss of a child is among the greatest pains any human being can experience. The Quran never portrays prophets as emotionless. They cried. They grieved. They loved. Their perfection lay not in the absence of emotion, but in the perfection of their obedience to Allah. Nuh continued trusting his Lord even while enduring personal heartbreak. After some time, when the immediate danger had passed, Nuh turned toward Allah. The promise had been that his family would be saved, except for those against whom the decree had already gone forth. Overwhelmed by grief, he respectfully spoke to his Lord. The Quran records his words. "My Lord, indeed my son is of my family, and indeed your promise is true, and you are the most just of judges." Quran 11:45. Notice the extraordinary respect. Nuh did not object. He did not accuse. He simply presented his sorrow before Allah. This is the etiquette of the prophets. When they ask with humility. When they seek understanding, they acknowledge Allah's perfect wisdom first. Then Allah answered with words that every believer should remember. He said, "O Noah, indeed he is not of your family. Indeed, his conduct was unrighteous. So do not ask me concerning that of which you have no knowledge. I advise you, lest you become among the ignorant." Quran 11:46. Allah was not denying the biological relationship. Rather, He was teaching that the true family of the prophets is the family of faith. The strongest bond is not blood. It is belief. A believer from the opposite side of the world may be spiritually closer than a relative who rejects Allah. This principle became one of the foundations of the Muslim Ummah centuries later. Immediately, Nuh responded with complete humility. There was no argument. No hesitation. No pride. He said, "My Lord, I seek refuge in you from asking you about that of which I have no knowledge. Unless you forgive me and have mercy upon me, I will be among the losers." Quran 11:47. What beautiful humility! Even after centuries of perfect obedience, a prophet immediately sought Allah's forgiveness when corrected. How much more should ordinary believers do the same? Meanwhile, the flood continued. The mountains disappeared beneath the rising waters. The idols vanished forever. The mighty chiefs who once mocked the prophet were nowhere to be seen. Their wealth, their homes, their power, their influence. Everything had disappeared beneath the waves. Only the ark remained, floating peacefully, protected entirely by the mercy of Allah. But the journey was far from over. For many days and nights, the ark would continue sailing across an endless ocean that covered the earth. And when Allah's decree had been fully completed, He would command the heavens and the earth once again. This time, not to release water, but to stop. There are moments in the Quran where just a few words describe events so immense that the human imagination struggles to grasp them. The great flood had transformed the earth into an endless sea. The familiar world had vanished. No roads remained. No villages could be seen. No marketplaces echoed with voices. No fields stretched across the valleys. The homes that generations had built with their own hands had disappeared beneath the waves. The idols that people once decorated with flowers and offerings were gone forever. Wad, Suwa, Yagath, Ya'ak, Nasr. None of them had saved a single soul. The very objects around which an entire civilization had revolved now lay buried beneath water and mud, unable even to save themselves. This was the final proof that only Allah possesses absolute power. The ark drifted across a world unlike any that had ever existed. The Quran does not tell us exactly how many days or months the voyage lasted. Some reports found in the Torah and later historical traditions mention specific time periods. A number of early Muslim historians also quoted these reports, but the Quran and authentic hadith do not confirm an exact duration. For that reason, Muslims leave the precise length of the voyage to Allah's knowledge. What the Quran emphasizes instead is something much greater. The ark moved only under Allah's care. Every wave, every current, every gust of wind, obeyed its creator perfectly. There was no captain standing at the helm making calculations. No sailors adjusting great sails. No navigator studying the stars. Allah Himself guided the ark. The believers aboard trusted completely in His protection. Life inside the ark gradually settled into a routine. The terrifying roar of the first days gave way to a quieter rhythm. Families cared for one another. The believers prayed together. They remembered Allah constantly. Every meal became a reminder of His provision. Every sunrise, even if hidden behind clouds, became another sign that Allah had preserved them. The animals remained under Allah's control. Predators did not attack prey. Creatures that would normally fear one another lived side by side. The one who had gathered them onto the ark also maintained order among them. It was another silent miracle. Sometimes the believers looked across the endless waters. Nothing could be seen except the horizon. The world they had known was gone. They had become witnesses to one of the greatest acts of divine judgment in human history. Some quietly reflected upon parents, neighbors, and friends who had rejected the truth. Others remembered the centuries of patient preaching. No one aboard celebrated the destruction. True believers never rejoice when people perish. They rejoice only in Allah's justice and mercy. Then, at the exact moment decreed by Allah before the creation of the heavens and the earth, everything changed. The Quran records one of the most majestic verses in all of Revelation. And it was said, O earth, swallow your water, and O sky, withhold your rain. And the water subsided, the matter was accomplished, and the ark came to rest upon Al Judi. And it was said, away with the wrongdoing people. Quran 11:44. This verse contains no unnecessary detail. Its beauty lies in its power. Allah speaks. Creation obeys instantly. No delay. No resistance. No hesitation. The same heavens that had poured torrents of rain now became silent. The clouds dispersed. The thunder ceased. The lightning disappeared. The rain stopped. At the same moment, the earth obeyed another command. The springs that had burst open across valleys and mountains began to close. The waters started to recede. The raging currents gradually weakened. The endless sea slowly began revealing the land once more. This is one of the greatest demonstrations of Allah's absolute authority in the Quran. He does not struggle against creation. He commands it. And it obeys. The Quran says, the matter was accomplished. In Arabic, Waqiya al-Amar. The divine decree had reached its completion. Justice had been fulfilled. Mercy had preserved the believers. The era before the flood had come to its end. A completely new chapter of human history was about to begin. Then came another unforgettable moment. The Ark. After traveling safely through mountain-like waves, finally came to rest. Allah says, and the Ark came to rest upon Al-Judi. The Quran identifies the mountain simply as Al-Judi. Many Muslim scholars throughout history have associated Mount Judi with a region in what is now southeastern Turkey, near the borders of Iraq and Syria. Other traditions have proposed nearby locations. Unlike some later traditions that identify Mount Ararat, the Quran specifically names Al-Judi, and Muslims affirm what the Quran states while recognizing that the precise modern identification remains a matter of historical investigation rather than a point of creed. The exact location is less important than the lesson. Allah chose the resting place. The ark stopped exactly where He decreed. Imagine the moment. After weeks or perhaps months surrounded by endless water, the ark no longer rocked beneath violent waves. Its movement slowed. Then, it stopped. A profound silence filled the vessel. The storm had ended. The wind softened. The rain had ceased. For the first time since the flood began, the believers heard something they had almost forgotten. Stillness. Nuh AS stood quietly. He understood that Allah's promise had been fulfilled. The believers looked at one another. Some wept. Others fell into prostration. Many whispered words of gratitude. Everything they possessed, their very lives, had been preserved only through Allah's mercy. Outside, the world looked unfamiliar. The landscape had changed forever. The floodwaters had carved new valleys. Great rocks had shifted. Ancient forests had disappeared. The earth bore the marks of Allah's judgment. Yet signs of new life were already appearing. As the waters withdrew, fresh soil emerged. Streams flowed peacefully once again. The same Lord who had brought destruction now prepared the earth for renewal. Throughout the Quran, Allah repeatedly reminds humanity that after hardship comes ease. After death comes resurrection. After barren land receives rain, it comes back to life. Nature itself reflects Allah's promises. Before anyone left the ark, they waited for Allah's command. This is another remarkable lesson. Even after surviving the flood, Nuh did not act independently. He remained completely obedient. Safety itself did not make him forget dependence upon Allah. The believer never graduates from obedience, whether in hardship or ease. The relationship with Allah remains the same. Then the command finally came. Allah said, O Noah, disembark in peace from us and with blessings upon you and upon nations from those with you. Quran 11:48. What beautiful words. Disembark in peace. The same Lord who had commanded the flood now welcomed his believing servants back to the earth with peace and blessings. Not merely survival. Blessing. Not merely life. Mercy. Nuh and the believers slowly prepared to step onto a world that no human being had ever seen before. Behind them lay the greatest flood in history. Before them lay the responsibility of rebuilding human civilization from the beginning. Every future nation. Every future language. Every future kingdom. Every future civilization would trace its ancestry back to the small group of believers who now stood upon the ark. For this reason, later Islamic tradition would honor Prophet Nuh AS with the title, the second father of humanity, because according to the Islamic narrative, the generations after the flood descended from those whom Allah preserved with him. But before this new beginning could fully unfold, there remained profound lessons to be learned. Lessons about gratitude, obedience, human history, and why Allah preserved this story in the Quran for every generation until the Day of Judgment. The wooden door of the ark slowly opened. For the first time since the flood had begun, fresh air flowed through the vessel without the roar of endless rain. The sky that had once been hidden behind thick black clouds was now clear. Sunlight spread across the mountains. Gentle winds carried the scent of wet earth. The terrifying sounds of crashing waves had faded into quiet streams flowing peacefully through newly carved valleys. The storm had ended. The judgment had been completed. The mercy of Allah had prevailed for those who believed. For a few moments, no one moved. The believers stood silently, overwhelmed by what lay before them. Behind them rested the ark that had become their refuge. Ahead of them stretched an unfamiliar world. Everything they had once known had disappeared. The villages where they had been born, gone. The roads they had walked for centuries, gone. The fields they had cultivated, gone. The homes where generations had lived, gone. Even the great centers of idol worship had vanished without leaving a trace. Only the signs of Allah remained. The mountains, the rivers, the sky, the earth, the creation that had always pointed toward its creator. Nuh AS was the first to step forward. Every movement reflected gratitude. He did not step onto the earth with pride. He did not think, "I survived because I built the Arkansas." He knew better than anyone. Without Allah, the ark would have become nothing more than floating wood. Every plank, every rope, every beam, had been protected only because Allah willed it. The believers followed him one by one. Some immediately fell into sujud, prostrating themselves upon the ground. Their foreheads touched the earth that Allah had preserved for them. Their tears mixed with the damp soil. For many, words could not fully express what their hearts felt. The Quran repeatedly teaches that gratitude is shown not only through speech but through obedience. The survivors understood this deeply. Their lives from this moment onward would belong entirely to Allah. Around them, the animals also emerged. Pairs that had lived together peacefully inside the ark now stepped back into the world. Birds spread their wings and disappeared into the bright sky. Deer cautiously entered the valleys. Sheep wandered across the fresh grass. Lions disappeared toward distant hills. The same Creator who had preserved every species during the flood now returned them to the earth to multiply once again. The balance of creation began anew. Every creature fulfilled the purpose for which Allah had created it. Without complaint. Without hesitation. Nature obeyed perfectly. The believers walked through the surrounding landscape. Everywhere they looked, the flood had left its mark. Massive rocks had shifted from their original places. New streams flowed where dry ground had once existed. Ancient trees lay scattered across the valleys. Some mountainsides had collapsed. The earth itself bore witness to Allah's power. Nothing in creation is permanent except Allah. Kingdoms disappear. Mountains erode. Rivers change their course. Only Allah remains unchanged forever. The Quran tells us that Allah blessed Nuh and those with him. This blessing was not limited to their own generation. Allah said, "Peace be upon Noah among all peoples." Quran 37:79. This remarkable verse shows that Allah himself honored Nuh AS before all later generations. Thousands of years would pass. Empires would rise and fall. Languages would change. Yet every generation of believers would continue saying, "Peace be upon Nuh." His patience became eternal. His trust became eternal. His example became eternal. Very few human beings have received such lasting honor from Allah. Then began one of the greatest responsibilities ever entrusted to a small group of people. They were no longer simply survivors. They were builders of the future. Every child born after the flood would inherit a world that had been purified from idolatry. The believers taught their children the same message that Adam AS had taught. The same message that Idris AS had preserved. The same message that Nuh AS had defended for 950 years. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. Children learned the names of Allah. They learned gratitude. They learned prayer. They learned honesty. They learned that every blessing belongs to their Lord. Nuh wanted future generations never to repeat the mistakes that had destroyed the previous civilization. Islamic historical traditions, based on reports from early scholars, mention that humanity spread once again through the descendants of Nuh's believing sons. The Quran itself says, "And we made his descendants those who remained." Quran 37:77. This verse confirms that the generations after the flood continued through Nuh's descendants. Many early Muslim historians identify his sons as Sam, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they describe different nations descending from them. These details are found in historical reports and are similar in part to accounts in the Torah, but the Quran does not elaborate on the genealogies. Therefore, Muslims affirm with certainty only what the Quran states, that Allah caused the surviving generations to continue through Nuh's descendants. As years passed, the memory of the flood remained vivid. Parents told their children about the ark. Grandparents described the terrifying waves. They spoke of Allah's justice. They spoke of His mercy. Most importantly, they warned their families never to worship anyone besides Allah. Every generation carried the responsibility of preserving Tawhid. The believers understood something that the previous civilization had forgotten. Shirk does not appear overnight. It begins with small compromises. A little negligence. A little pride. A little exaggeration in honoring righteous people. Then, generation after generation, the truth becomes blurred. Nuh taught his descendants to guard their hearts carefully. Because Satan had not disappeared. His promise to mislead humanity still remained. The Quran presents the story of Nuh not merely as ancient history but as a mirror for every generation. Whenever societies become arrogant, whenever wealth replaces gratitude, whenever false beliefs replace revelation, whenever people mock those who call toward Allah, the story of Nuh becomes relevant once again. The flood was unique. But the spiritual lessons continue until the day of judgment. Centuries later, Allah would send another prophet. Then another. And another. Hud. Salih. Ibrahim. Lot. Ismail. Ishaq. Yaqub, Yusuf, Musa, Dawood, Suleiman, Isa. Finally, Muhammad. Every one of them would carry exactly the same message that Nuh had preached for nearly 1,000 years. Worship Allah alone. The prophets differed in some laws suited to their nations. But their creed never changed. Tawhid remained the foundation of every revelation. As Nuh AS grew older, he witnessed the new generation walking upon the earth. Children laughed once more. Families cultivated fresh fields. Animals multiplied. The earth flourished again by Allah's permission. His heart found peace. The mission entrusted to him had been fulfilled completely. He had conveyed Allah's message without compromise. He had endured ridicule with patience. He had trusted Allah when no one else believed. He had built the ark under divine guidance. He had survived the greatest catastrophe in human history. And now, he watched humanity begin again. Yet one final chapter of his extraordinary story still remained. The Quran and the authentic Hadith preserve profound lessons about the final years of Nuh AS, his death, his place among the greatest messengers known as the Ulul Azm, his role on the Day of Judgment, and the timeless wisdom that his life continues to teach every believer until the end of time. Those remarkable final chapters conclude the story of one of humanity's greatest prophets. The world had become quiet once again. The terrible sound of the flood no longer echoed across the valleys. The endless rain had become a distant memory. The mountains stood peacefully beneath clear skies. Rivers flowed gently through newly formed landscapes. Fields slowly turned green. Birds filled the morning air with songs that had been absent during the great storm. Life had returned. But it was not the same world. It was a new beginning. Every child born after the flood inherited a history unlike any other generation. Their grandparents had witnessed Allah's judgment with their own eyes. Their parents had lived aboard the ark. Their prophet had spoken directly with the Lord of the worlds. For these believers, faith was not merely inherited tradition. It was living memory. Prophet Nuh AS continued guiding his people after the flood. The Quran does not record every sermon he delivered during these final years. Nor does it tell us exactly how long he lived afterward. Some early historical reports suggest many additional years. Others propose different lengths. Because these reports are not established by authentic Quranic evidence or Sahih Hadith, Muslims do not state them as certain. What remains certain is that Nuh continued as a prophet, teacher, and guide until Allah completed his earthly life. Imagine the respect his people felt whenever he spoke. This was not merely an elderly man. This was the servant whom Allah had protected through the greatest flood in human history. His face carried the marks of centuries of worship. His hands had built the ark under Allah's guidance. His eyes had witnessed the destruction of an entire civilization and the rebirth of another. Every wrinkle upon his face told a story of patience. Every word that left his lips carried wisdom earned through nearly a millennium of steadfastness. Young children gathered around him, eager to hear stories of Adam AS, of the earliest generations, and of Allah's countless blessings. Parents brought their sons and daughters to learn directly from the Prophet. He reminded them again and again. Never allow your hearts to become attached to anything besides Allah. He knew exactly how shirk had entered the world before. Not through open rebellion at first, but through gradual neglect. Through exaggerated admiration. Through forgetting the true purpose of worship. Nuh wanted the next generations to guard their faith carefully. Throughout Islamic history, scholars have reflected on why Allah preserved the story of Nuh in so many chapters of the Quran. His story appears in Surah Al-Araf, Hud, Yunus, Al-Mu'minin, Ash-Shu'ara, As-Safat, Al-Qamar, Nuh, and several other places. No prophet before Ibrahim AS received such extensive attention in the Quran. Why? Because every generation faces the same spiritual dangers. People become comfortable. Comfort becomes pride. Pride becomes heedlessness. Heedlessness opens the door to Satan. The story of Nuh reminds believers that faith must be protected continuously. One day, as Nuh looked upon the growing communities around him, he understood that his own journey on earth was approaching its end. Every soul shall taste death. Even the greatest prophets did not remain forever. Adam AS returned to Allah. Idris AS returned to Allah. Nuh would also return to his Lord. Death is not failure for the prophets. It is the completion of their mission. Although the Quran does not describe Nuh's final moments, authentic Islamic teachings remind believers that every prophet meets death with complete trust in Allah. They leave behind no worldly kingdom, no palace, no empire. Their greatest inheritance is guidance. The Prophet Muhammad later taught, the prophets do not leave behind dinars or dirhams. They leave behind knowledge. This principle perfectly describes Nuh. His greatest treasure was not the ark. The ark fulfilled its purpose. His greatest legacy was Tawhid, the worship of Allah alone. That message would continue through every prophet who followed him. Allah honored Nuh in a way that very few human beings have ever been honored. In Surah As-Safat, Allah declares, "Peace be upon Noah among all peoples." Quran 37:79. Think about these words. Thousands of years have passed. Entire civilizations have disappeared. Languages have evolved. Empires have risen and fallen. Yet Muslims across every continent still say, "Peace be upon Nuh." His name remains alive because Allah himself preserved his honor. This is one of the greatest forms of success a human being can ever achieve. Not worldly fame. Not wealth. But being remembered with honor by Allah until the end of time. The Quran also praises him with another remarkable description. Allah says, "Indeed, he was a grateful servant." Quran 17:3. Out of all the qualities Allah could have highlighted, he chose gratitude. Not intelligence. Not strength. Not courage. Although Nuh possessed all these qualities, Allah praised his gratitude. Why? Because gratitude lies at the heart of true worship. Nuh remained thankful before the flood. Thankful during the flood. Thankful after the flood. His circumstances changed dramatically. His gratitude never changed. This is one of the greatest lessons for every believer. The Prophet Muhammad later placed Nuh among the greatest messengers known as the Ulul Azm, the messengers of firm resolve. These are the prophets distinguished by extraordinary perseverance in carrying Allah's message through immense trials. They are Nuh AS, Ibrahim AS, Musa AS, Isa AS, Muhammad. Among thousands of prophets, these five hold a special rank because of the immense responsibilities and trials they endured. Nuh stands at the beginning of this honored group. His patience became the standard by which perseverance would be remembered. As generations passed, stories about the Great Flood spread across the earth. Different civilizations preserved memories of a catastrophic flood. Historians have noted flood traditions in many ancient cultures, including Mesopotamian literature such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, and in the Torah's book of Genesis. While these accounts contain similarities, they also differ in important ways from the Quranic narrative. From an Islamic perspective, the Quran is the final and preserved revelation. Similarities in earlier traditions may reflect remnants of an original historical memory, while differences are understood as later alterations or additions rather than authoritative sources for Muslims. Nuh's life teaches something remarkable. His success cannot be measured by numbers. For centuries, only a relatively small number believed. Yet Allah describes him as one of humanity's greatest prophets. Modern people often judge success by popularity, followers, influence, recognition. The Quran teaches another standard. Success is fulfilling the responsibility Allah gives you. Results belong to Him alone. Nuh fulfilled his duty perfectly. That is why his story continues inspiring believers more than 4,000 years later. As the years passed, his descendants spread across the earth. Languages gradually developed. Communities expanded. People traveled farther from the mountain where the ark had rested. New towns appeared. Agriculture flourished once again. The world slowly filled with people. But Allah knew something they did not. Humanity would once again drift toward corruption. New generations would forget. New idols would appear. New nations would reject their prophets. The struggle between truth and falsehood would begin again. For this reason, Allah, in His mercy, would continue sending messengers. The next great chapter in sacred history would eventually lead to another prophet. One who would arise among a powerful nation called Ad. His name was Hud AS. But before we leave the story of Nuh, one of the most profound scenes involving him has not yet taken place. It will not happen in this world. It will happen on the greatest day in all of existence. The day when every human being from Adam until the last person born will stand before Allah. On that day, Prophet Nuh AS will once again speak before all of humanity. And his testimony will become one of the most powerful moments described in the authentic hadith. One day, the heavens and the earth will come to an end. The mountains that stood firm since the creation of mankind will crumble. The oceans will overflow. The stars will lose their light. The sun will be folded up. Every kingdom, every empire, every palace, every city, every human being will stand before Allah, the Lord of all creation. The Quran calls it Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of resurrection. It will be the greatest gathering in history. Every prophet, every king, every child, every believer, every disbeliever, from Adam AS until the last human being, will stand together before the Creator. Among them will stand Prophet Nuh AS, the man who spent 950 years calling his people to worship Allah alone. His earthly mission ended thousands of years before. But on that day, his testimony will become part of Allah's perfect justice. The Prophet Muhammad described this remarkable scene in an authentic narration recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari. Allah will call Nuh AS. He will answer, "Here I am, my Lord." Allah will ask him, "Did you convey my message?" Nuh will reply, "Yes, my Lord." Then Allah will summon the people of Nuh. He will ask them, "Did not convey the message to you?" But in their stubbornness, even on the day of judgment, they will deny it. They will claim, "No warner came to us." Imagine the boldness of that denial. After centuries of preaching, after public invitations, private conversations, warnings day and night, they still attempt to deny the truth before Allah. Yet Allah's justice is perfect. No lie can survive before Him. Allah will then ask Nuh, "Who will testify on your behalf?" Nuh will answer, "Muhammad and his Ummah." At first, this seems astonishing. How can the followers of Prophet Muhammad testify about events that happened thousands of years before they were born? Because Allah informed them through the Quran. The Muslim Ummah believes what Allah revealed. Not because they witnessed it with their own eyes, but because Allah is the most truthful. The Prophet Muhammad then recited the verse. Thus we have made you a justly balanced nation so that you may be witnesses over mankind, and the messenger will be a witness over you. Quran 2:143. This authentic hadith gives Muslims a unique responsibility. Believers become witnesses because they preserve and affirm Allah's revealed truth. This narration also demonstrates the immense honor granted to Prophet Nuh AS. Thousands of years after his death, his truthfulness will still be publicly established before all humanity. Every insult he endured, every mockery, every accusation, will be answered completely. Allah's justice may seem delayed in this world, but it is never absent. Every prophet who was rejected will be vindicated. Every believer who remained patient will receive justice. Every oppressor will answer for what he did. The day of judgment completes the story that this world leaves unfinished. Nuh AS also occupies a unique place in another authentic hadith describing Ash-Shafa al-Uzma, the Great Intercession. This narration is found in both Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. On the day of judgment, humanity will experience such fear and distress that people will search desperately for someone to intercede with Allah so that judgment may begin. They will first go to Adam AS. Adam will decline because of his own situation and direct them onward. Then they will go to Nuh AS. They will say words similar to these. O Nuh, you are the first messenger sent by Allah to the people of the earth, and Allah named you a grateful servant. Intercede for us with your Lord. Notice the honor contained in these words. The first messenger sent to the people of the earth. Islam distinguishes between Adam AS, who was the first prophet, and Nuh AS, who was the first messenger sent to a people who had fallen into widespread disbelief and idolatry. This distinction is affirmed in authentic hadith. Despite this tremendous honor, Nuh will respond with humility. He will remember his conversation with Allah concerning his son. Out of reverence for his Lord, he will not assume a station that Allah has not granted him. Instead, he will direct humanity to another prophet, then to another, then another, until they finally come to Prophet Muhammad, who will be granted the great intercession by Allah's permission. Even in the hereafter, the humility of the prophets shines brilliantly. None of them seeks honor for himself. Every one of them glorifies Allah alone. The story of Nuh is far more than the story of a flood. It is the story of patience. No human being preached longer. No prophet endured rejection for so many centuries. Yet he never changed the message. Not once. He never adjusted Tawhid to make it more acceptable. He never compromised to gain popularity. He never abandoned the poor to satisfy the wealthy. He never despaired of Allah's mercy. His life proves that success is measured by obedience, not by numbers. His story is also the story of trust. When Allah commanded him to build an ark on dry land, he obeyed. He did not demand explanations. He did not ask for visible proof. He trusted the one who commanded him. That trust became the means of salvation. Every believer is called to develop the same certainty. Sometimes Allah's wisdom becomes clear immediately. Sometimes only years later. Sometimes not until the hereafter. Faith means trusting Him in every circumstance. The story of Nuh is also a warning. The first act of shirk did not begin with people openly denying Allah. It began with excessive admiration of righteous people. Then images. Then generations forgot. Then worship shifted from the Creator to the creation. This lesson remains as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Islam commands believers to love and honor the righteous. But worship belongs to Allah alone. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every act of ultimate hope and fear must be directed to Him alone. The flood itself teaches another timeless truth. No worldly power can stand against Allah's decree. The chiefs trusted their influence. The wealthy trusted their possessions. The strong trusted their strength. Nuh's son trusted a mountain. None of these could save anyone. Only Allah's mercy saves. This lesson echoes throughout every age. People may place their trust in technology, wealth, politics, or military power. All of these are means that function only by Allah's permission. The believer uses the means while placing ultimate trust in the Creator. For your own life, perhaps the greatest lesson is patience. 950 years. That number is almost impossible to comprehend. If Nuh AS could continue inviting people to Allah for centuries without giving up, how can a believer lose hope after a few difficult years? Every prayer matters. Every act of kindness matters. Every sincere reminder matters. Allah sees every effort, even when people do not. Today, thousands of years after the Great Flood, the name of Nuh AS is still remembered. Children learn his story. Scholars study his words. Believers recite the verses that mention him. His enemies have long since turned to dust. Their palaces disappeared. Their idols vanished. Their names are forgotten. But Allah fulfilled His promise. The grateful servant remains honored among all peoples. Just as the Quran declared, "Peace be upon Noah among all peoples." Quran 37:79. And every believing heart replies, "Peace be upon Prophet Noah, one of the greatest messengers of Allah, whose patience became a light for every generation until the last day."